this source for me today, I think is going to be very moving, and I am looking forward to getting into it together with you all and with you, Justin. I also wanted to mention quickly that me and our lovely colleague Sue Braithwaite, who is in Third Space with us, a wonderful coach and person, we are going to be teaching on the 1st and 2nd of October this year in Hammersmith. The course is called Coaching to Excellence. It's a 2-day intro program to our coaching work. And I wanted to mention it up front here so that everybody gets a chance to hear that it's happening and to ask us any questions if you'd like to as well. So please reach out on Messenger or in the comments, anything you like, and me and Sue can respond to any questions that you have. And you can go to our website, thirdspacecoaching.com, to see more details about what it is and what you might learn and what we have on offer. So that's my beginning part, just to say hello to you all. And so we're going to read this source together, and Justin is going to maybe read first and say hello.
I will. Good morning, everybody. Yes, like Lizzie, I'm filled with the glow of Holly's ordination yesterday. It was incredibly precious thing to be in. And there's a bit of an ordination theme for me, because this, I'm going to wave this book around that we're reading from this morning. This book is called Unclouded by Longing by Christopher Goodchild, and its subtitle is Meditations on Autism and Being Present in an Overwhelming World. So what I understand about Christopher Goodchild is that, among other things, he discovered that one name for a way of being that he had lived in all his life in the world is high-functioning autism, and he only found that name I think in his late 40s. I think from reading he's maybe in his early 50s now. And this is a profound and beautiful book of his reflections on life and what it is to live in the midst of struggle and difficulty and trauma and possibility and hope. And the wonderful thing about this book is it was introduced to me only in the last week by somebody whose ordination as a Church of England priest I went to 2 weeks ago. So I feel like I'm in the midst of a series of ordinations right now, none of which are my own, and all of which have been really, really moving and different from one another. So I'm going to start off by reading this. This book is a series of very short chapters, and this one, number 34, is called The Gift of Not Knowing, and it begins with a quote from the poet Emily Dickinson. "Not knowing when the dawn will come, I open every door." Letting go of trying to work everything out in your head can lead you directly into the most sublime mystery of all, your heart, your true self. To open yourself to this mystery, you will often have to pass through the discomfort of the rational mind simply not knowing. What at first might seem like an impending breakdown can easily become a profound breakthrough. This is beautifully conveyed in The Real Work by Wendell Berry. It may be that when we no longer know what to do, we have come to our real work, and that when we no longer know which way to go, we have begun our real journey. The mind that is not baffled is not employed. The impeded stream is the one that sings. The emotional distress that often accompanies losing your direction in life cannot be glamorized nor underestimated when you're unable to come up with a rational solution to your predicament. However, it is true to say that one of the greatest gifts you have received in this life is the gift of desperation, directly linked to the rational mind not coming up trumps. In many ways, being in uncertainty and mystery is a necessary rite of passage you must go through in order to enter into the heart of what it means to be most alive. As a writer, you see it as a vocational calling for you to invite the unfamiliar. In living your life this way, you surrender into something greater. Your perceptions are stretched, as is your imagination, pushing the boundaries of what is unknown and unforeseen. The breakthrough experience whereby you move from lost to found is exhilarating. The attachment to the small self is loosened. and an infinitely larger, more expansive self is glimpsed. It is here, in these glimpses, that a startling new landscape, or perhaps a radically new way of seeing, has opened up within you. Here the words of Jesus come to mind. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it. To embrace the gift of not knowing is to embark on one of the greatest adventures, and one that, if fully entered into, will change your life forever.
The Gift of Not Knowing by Christopher Goodchild. Not knowing when the dawn will come, I open every door, says Emily Dickinson. Letting go of trying to work everything out in your head can lead you directly into the most sublime mystery of all, your heart, your true self. To open into this mystery, you will often have to pass through the discomfort of the rational mind, simply not knowing. What at first might seem like an impending breakdown can easily become a profound breakthrough. This is beautifully conveyed in The Real Work by Wendell Berry. It may be that when we no longer know what to do, we have come to our real work. And that when we no longer know which way to go, we've begun our real journey. The mind that is not baffled is not employed. The impeded stream is the one that sings. The emotional stress that often accompanies losing your direction in life cannot be glamorized nor underestimated. When you are unable to come up with a rational solution to your predicament. However, it is true to say that one of the greatest gifts you have received in this life is the gift of desperation, directly linked to the rational mind not coming up trumps. In many ways, being in uncertainty and mystery is a necessary rite of passage you must go through in order to enter into the heart of what it means to be most alive. As a writer, you see it as a vocational calling for you to invite the unfamiliar. In living your life in this way, you surrender into something greater. Your perceptions are stretched, as is your imagination, pushing the boundaries of what is unknown and unforeseen. The breakthrough experience whereby you move from lost to found is exhilarating. The attachment to the small self is loosened, and an infinitely larger, more expansive self is glimpsed. It is here in these glimpses that a startling new landscape, or perhaps a radically new way of seeing, is opened up within you. Here the words of Jesus come to mind. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it. To embrace the gift of not knowing is to embark on one of the greatest adventures, and one that, if fully entered into, will change your life forever.
The first thing I realised in hearing Christopher Goodchild's words is how incredibly difficult I find what he's talking about. In so many ways, I read it and I hear what he has to say, and there's a sort of a really deep part of me that goes, yeah, I really understand. I really get that. Most of my attempts to know anything about my life and about what life is shrink it to such tiny proportions, and I might talk more about this as we go, but how much desperation there is in my attempts to work it out and all of that. And then as we're reading Lizzie, what I also feel is, oh my goodness, it's really easy to say, and it takes such a lot of letting go for me to allow myself really into this place of really not knowing. So I think I'm much better at talking about it than I am at doing it. It's like it's not so hard to talk about in some, oh, of course, kind of way. Oh my goodness, everything. I was going to say everything in me. That's really overstating it. But there's such a large part of me that is so attached to understanding that when, and maybe this is what he's saying, that when I don't, what comes up for me very quickly is a kind of all kinds of things: panic, self-criticism, desperate attempts to claw my way back into some kind of safe space where I understand. So I think this is a giant invitation that he's making here.
Yeah, I think it's giant as well. And so my current experience actually is that it's like being thrown into the rational, normal way of dealing with things, being thrown out of that. It's like where it's not available to you anymore. And preceding which has been a lot of attempts for the rational mind to kind of get a hold of it and fix something or change something. And to be in that experience where you feel like everything that you've got doesn't work. And normally, for me, the definition of everything I've got is some way of figuring it out, taking action, doing something, sorting things, being pragmatic. And when all of those arrows in your, I don't know what it's called, your quiver are exhausted, I think this is asking us, well, what then? And living into the what then once those things are exhausted and done. And being in that place of not knowing, as Christopher Goodchild is calling it, where those typical what you've got to respond with things are exhausted, is a really tough place to be. And I really, really palpably feel the mystery of it. And almost that it's an invitation to us, to me, that's really compelling because it's not filled with something that I can even get hold of. Like I can't even find the words for it. But it's very compelling and very powerful. And yet the rational mind really can't get anywhere near it. So it's hard to tell anyone about it, or to speak about it, or to process it even. But it feels like the pull, some kind of pull. And Christopher Goodchild mentions the word vocation as a writer, that vocational calling to invite something wholly different and unfamiliar. It feels of the same kind of quality. So I'm curious now between the not knowing and the vocational call, and what the relationship between not knowing and vocation is.
Mm. Mm. I have a little bit of a sense of this. It seems to me that, I don't know if you just said this or if Christopher Goodchild said this or you both said this, but it seems to me that what's calling us, what we might really be here to do, or at least one form of what we might be here to do, really only comes to us when we've exhausted our ordinary strategies, and then something surprising can happen. And at least it seems to me that one of the things that happens is we dedicate a huge part of our lives to getting really good at something, and that might be getting really good at something that other people can see as good at, like good at a profession, or good at taking care of people, or good at thinking deeply, or good at. And I think in Christopher Goodchild's example from reading more of his book, good at covering up what was really going on for him, which is another thing that any of us can do. Good at looking okay. We get really good at something, and if we're very lucky, and at the time it may not seem very lucky, we exhaust our capacity to do that anymore, and it starts to all the strategies that we had for holding the world together and to having it be familiar and known start to creak, or maybe even smash. And that's when something, I suppose for me, that's when something really new can start to come forward. And if we're really patient with ourselves and don't get too quickly into covering it up or listening too closely to other people who'd like us to just to get on with the thing we were doing already, we have a chance of stepping into the unknown and seeing what's there. And I think I get glimpses of this, Lizzie, when I was thinking about writing, also writing for me, and how I haven't done very much writing in recent weeks. I've been intending myself to other things. And they are often other things that I know I'm good at.
Mm.
And writing for me is this really interesting one, because I don't know what to do when I write. And often the things that I write that seem to move me the most, let alone anyone else, the ones where I didn't know where on earth I was going. And so it feels like there's the little glimpse of this vocational something in it. And maybe it's even not that. But I'm sort of looping around here into this, wanting to say that there's this sort of vocation can have this glamorous kind of tinge to it, like I found my vocation, way, but actually I think more often than not, it's what we discover in the midst of our exhaustion, our not being able to continue the way that we have, and our confusion, is when we then find little glimpses of what might actually be life-giving right in the middle of that. That's when the seeds of something that's really vocational start to come right in the midst of this not knowing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it can be quite scary, actually. And I think part of it for me is like, even is that, like, there's a quality of it being so unfamiliar that it can also feel like kind of madness or something, or delusion, or feeling completely not in the world, almost like a realm, because it's being born, I guess, because it's new and the unknown, and it doesn't have form, so it can be like, oh God, am I entering to something that is not okay, or is going to send me into kind of, I don't know, being somebody who just wants to run away or something. And so it becomes like I have to stay very patient, like you said, like just as I was thinking the word patient, you said patient to allow something, like I can't force it or run away, actually. Even if I think I can, I kind of can't, because of the way that it is, the depth of it, the strength of it, the compellingness of it. And when I say it, I mean the feeling of the beyond, beyond the life I have, beyond the structures I have, beyond the ways of coping that I have, beyond the ways of putting things together that I have, beyond the ways of controlling I have, or at least trying to control. And so this kind of patience is required, that it doesn't feel like it has also doubt in it, like, well, maybe this is not even in service of anything. I don't know what this is. And so for me, there's also an element of faith in here as well, faithful to the intelligence of life itself, that it would have me included in it, that I might be given these experiences of not knowing, these occasions of feeling deeply confused and spun into something I don't understand, that life itself would have that for me, that I can then welcome it, and that it's of goodness, rather than interpreting it like isn't so normal in our culture that there's something horribly wrong, and that I would be best to go back and shut this right down again. Because I can feel that. I can feel the pull of that. Just pull yourself together and get on with it kind of narrative that feels so prevalent in parenting, in the way that my neighbor speaks to me. It's like, it's all there. to pull me back from it because of genuine concern, because of when we don't know what to do with experiences that are outside of the norm, we can't tolerate that in another. And so I think it's also important for us to be around people who can be in the conversation about it and turn towards it with us, rather than the ones who kind of panic and say, oh gosh, well, maybe you should go to the doctor or something, or maybe you should. So I think that's a big thing for me, is like finding a way of protecting the little flame of it by speaking to the kinds of people that I can speak to about it, and for it to stay alive and stay open and stay vulnerable, rather than be popped back in a box or something again.
It's really striking me as you're talking, Lizzie, that we mostly live in a culture that has given up on mystery. So we're really big on knowing stuff, and these days it's got very, very twisted because for years we were caught up rightly in scientific materialism, like you can know stuff by proving it's really important, so much can happen. And now we're living through this totally weird period where we want to know stuff without having anything to base it on. We say, I know that this is the case, and that's where the whole fake news, all of this thing is coming from. They're just different claims to knowing. They're all claims to knowing things. I know this to be true because somebody else told me, or because I thought it, or I know this to be true because I read it in a book and there's grounded evidence for it. I'm all for the grounded evidence side of things on that one. And what neither leaves space for is, like I would say, when you're talking about this experience of yours, and I know this place too, and I'm speaking to so many people who are in the midst of something like this at the moment, who are all experiencing something of what you said, which is, I'm in territory I don't know, maybe there's something wrong with me, people are telling me to go and get myself sorted out so I can get back on track. There's no space for saying something really different, which is, welcome to the great mystery. Maybe, like Wendell Berry says, and he is such an amazing writer about this kind of thing, maybe this is the beginning of the real something, when we find ourselves in this place that our culture is so ready to say, bad, wrong, mistake, get out of it. Get back on track, Lizzie, because there's things to be done and they have to be done successfully in this way and that way. So, mystery and not knowing, I think, are really deeply intertwined with one another. They are inevitably the same thing.
Yeah, and I feel like I have to mention as well all of the stuff that comes with this place as well, is in my process at the moment, is feeling like I've got nothing to give. Like I don't know how to do the things that I am supposed to do, that I am really sensitive, that it's like being like I'm encountering everything for the first time, even though it's the same as it's always been, with a kind of thinking that I'm right on the front line of things. So there doesn't feel like much security or much inner predictability, that things come when they come, and and they come strongly. Like a lot of feelings come very, very strongly at points that are completely unexpected. And so opening into that as mystery is really different than giving myself a hard time for feeling that way, or being in the kind of contraction that says, stop being ridiculous, get back in your box, you're being too sensitive, but allowing that to be there and still functioning as well. Still putting one foot in front of the other and faithfully saying, well, in one way I have to keep putting one foot in front of the other, because that's the way that the path will be made. And that's the way that I will maybe answer whatever this is in terms of be with, not as in answer the question, because there isn't even a question actually, but responds to, be with, allow. And I think the ordinariness of life feels to me like a really supportive way of being in the unknown. The ordinariness of making a cup of tea or going for a walk or hanging out on the lawn with the children. You know, it's like a place for me where ordinariness is called for, and grand inquiries don't really seem to be the thing as well.
You said something really, I thought, brilliant, connecting up to something else you said earlier. When you were speaking earlier, you talked about how much it is when we find ourselves in what I'm calling the mystery, that we want to control the world so it will be familiar again. And seem to have been in 5 or 6 conversations about this with various people over the last week, about how much and how invisible it is to us that we're trying to have the world be a particular way. And one of the ways that we do it, I can't remember, Lizzie, if you said it as, did you say helping people? You said something like, I can't be of help to people, and what struck me when you said that was, I thought about the same version in me, which is that when I'm in this place of the awesome, terrible, beautiful mystery of not knowing things, the thing I can't be is, it's hard for me to be, is to feel responsible. And my way of getting the world back into order is to go and try and do things that will have me be responsible. Usually it's funny because it's the way technology works. I think it's like things like answering emails. Well, I'm feeling really, really, really frightened, so I'll go and answer my emails. Then I'll feel responsible again, and then I'll know myself in a particular way, and everything will calm down and the world will be back. And the biggest invitation is when it seems to me is exactly what you're saying, is when we find ourselves unable to be the way that the familiar way that we've taken ourselves to be. And that maybe that's part of the very life-giving vocational part of this, is it gives us a chance to do what Wendell Berry is saying, is finding out that our real work may not be actually the way we've oriented our lives. Maybe it turns out, like the one that I'm wondering about for me is some deep artistic calling. Just going to mute myself because there's a phone ringing now in my room here.
Yeah, Justin, I feel that. And the word that's coming to me, and I think this is what Christopher's onto, is this word aliveness. And if what's at stake in service of my aliveness is this kind of letting go of all of these wrangling moves I have to make the world be what my rational mind thinks it should be, I'm up for it. You know, I can feel my dedication to aliveness, that even if it includes pain and discomfort and difficulty, I'm there. Like that word, aliveness and realness, too, is a word. They feel like those things are worth whatever this weird feeling is of being kind of shot out of a cannon, where you've got no kind of reference points. But the word, and mystery as well, so realness, mystery and aliveness, I can feel myself drawn really deeply to those, with a combined willingness to experience whatever it takes for those things to be part of what it means to be this human. And so that feeling of being drawn to those things allows there to be an invitational feeling at the same time as there being difficulty. And I'm really appreciative that I have that. Like I have that understanding and knowing feeling of a pull to aliveness that helps me be present with the discomfort and the weirdness and the not knowing and the disorientation, because I know what it's in service of.
I really wish, well, I can say this in two different ways. First, the way I was going to say this was, I really wish we hadn't lost contact in our culture with the mysteriousness of life. And I'm thinking about all the ways that we get taught in a way that sort of life is like a linear path. You start somewhere, you figure out what you're going to do, even though you might change what you do in various ways. It's like a path. You get better and better and better and more sure of what you're up to, and then, I don't know, you retire or you die, or there's no space in that story for life is going to rise to meet you. It's going to upend you. It's going to turn you inside out. And in the process, with the right support and the right openness, something extraordinary and necessary might come that might make sense in your lifetime and might not. Might actually only make sense in a way that you can't see. We don't have any, we don't have any of those stories or myths. Most of us don't have ritual that can help us with it. We don't have times of community rituals for times of transition, all of this stuff. And it pains me to say that this kind of work that we're both dedicated to, that gets called coaching, I know that the kind of coaching that we're up to is really respectful of this, but there's a huge part of this field which is dedicated to, if you're in a situation like the one you're in, Lizzie, which is pull yourself back together, let's get you productive and successful again. Which I think is so distressing that that's the move that we make. And I suppose I'm saying something about what, partly what this Turning Towards Life project seems it is to me in its very, very tiny way, because we've got this tiny little window of half an hour where we get online once a week. But I know that so many of the other things that we've got dedicated to, and I keep on meeting people who are bringing this question back from the margins into the center, is can we start to have a much deeper respect for what life actually is, and how much bigger than us it is, and how much, once we've learned to move in the world, how much letting go we need to learn to do. All of that's coming up really strongly in this conversation, and feeling into what you're saying about your own life and reading what Christopher Goodchild has to say. We so desperately need this.
Mm. We do, because otherwise we're always crossing the line into madness all the time.
Right.
Because that's where we've put the line. So because of where we put the line is how we deem ourselves like sane or insane or something. And that line, at some point, culturally, we have to move it. And I think you and I are trying to move it. Where we say, oh, how interesting, rather than, oh dear, off you pop. And I think that's one of the big things about, I feel one of the big points of my life is to be someone who moves that line with individual conversations that I have, with the things that I'm involved with, is to be a welcomer of things rather than a pusher or awayer. And in that, one human to another gives a kind of a place for that person to stand, rather than to feel kind of rejected by their encounter with another human being. And I think we're really powerful. I think that when someone stands and says, yes, tell me some more, a little bit like you did with me yesterday, when I was crying my eyes out after the ordination had finished and I was supposed to be in the social picnic and I couldn't stop crying. And you said some things to me that were just in the conversation with me, rather than, oh gosh, there's a lot of people here, why don't you just stop crying for a minute and have a sandwich, And it's that kind of faith in life that we can have for each other and others, that what's happening is okay and we can speak with it, that certainly has the impact of going, oh well, it's all right that I'm in this experience. I'm not judging it as something wrong or something that needs to go away.
I'm really glad you said all of that. And I'm thinking right now of two people that I'm going to send this conversation to who don't normally follow this project of ours, who I hope that what you've just said will be so helpful. So, like you say, and I think I'm looking at the time and thinking this will be the last thing I'll say. What Lizzie, a beautiful way of talking about the work that there is to be done is moving the line so that we can welcome more and more of life and not have people have to get back on track and to dissociate from and split off and parts of themselves. Yeah, I'm really up for that. And I know that that's what we're trying to do here on Sunday mornings as well.
Yes, it's the undercover agenda.
Secret turning towards life agenda. So I want to, I just want to recommend this book to everyone.
Oh, yes.
I would so love it if, get this book, read this book, give this book to people. It's an amazing, amazing, generous gift in the world.
Thank you, Justin, for another wonderful time. So
whatever you just said, Lizzie, you, at least at my end, you cut off. You said a wonderful time and you said so, and then you were gone.
I was just saying it was wonderful that we do this. I'm so grateful.
Yeah.
And to everybody out there as well, all of you watching, while we're doing this, we've got no idea who that is or who you are. But then when we go online afterwards and see all your participation, it's such a joy. So thank you.
We know that there are hundreds of people who are following this, and we are deeply grateful that you are. So we're going to stop for this week. We'll be back next Sunday, all being well, 9 o'clock UK time, many other times at different places in the world. Check us out at turningtowards.life, and you can find our way into our Facebook group there if you haven't found your way in there. And we'll see you soon. Bye.